Well, this is the first in what I hope is a new series of an interview type format where we have kind of a freestyle kind of podcast type of interview where we just have conversations with me and a guest of the day. And today we have Cass Nichols with us, who has been a tech for 24 years and has such a great wealth of knowledge and experience, a lot of wisdom, and I rely on him a lot for all kinds of information and pro tips and learning what to do, what not to do, and he gives me a lot of great information that I then in turn pass along to customers. And he agreed today to sit down with us in his shop and discuss what it's like to come up in the industry as a new technician, the things you learn about how to purchase tools, how to take care of your tools, and how to make your way upwards and through your career. So thank you very much for joining us today, Cass. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
And talk to me about what your initial experiences were like with getting into the industry, what your exposure was like to tool buying, to tool trucks in particular, and how that helped shape a lot of your experiences and what you learned from it.
So how I got into the trade was through it. Well, I knew I wanted to do it like since I was a little kid. I always liked working on stuff. And so I slowly built up, and I went and I finally like made that step. And then when I started driving, I started working on my own cars. And then I realized I wanted to work in the shop. So I kind of had to wait through a friend to get my first job. And I had my first job for 21 years, so I kind of got spoiled in a way, and then kind of not. But whenever I first that's how I got in. I was the porter. I was the entry-level guy. So for 2 weeks, all I did was clean, and then I got a better job, and then I did that for a while, and I got a better job. And so you kind of like work your way up the old proverbial ladder, as you say in the shop. You start from cleaning garbage cans, and then before you know it, you're, working on cars, and you learn the business side of the business too when you work in a small shop, because when the boss is away, you unfortunately have to handle customers and order parts and write service tickets and give estimates and take money in and stuff like that. But just to kind of shorten it up, that's how I got started, and it was after school. And so my first exposure to tools was working on my own cars, and between I had to go to like Sears or Western Auto, and at the time Western Auto used to sell Craftsman tools, and so I at least knew Craftsman's like pretty good. I don't work in a shop, so I don't have any access to like Snap-on tools or whatnot. So when I started in my first job, or my first shop, my first automotive job, I worked after school, so I didn't see the Snap-on guy or the Cornwall guy. I only knew the Matco guy, because the Matco guy came in the afternoons. Hence the Matco tools, right? And so they explained to me how the payments worked and what I needed to do, and I just paid for everything up front. I was like, okay, well, these screwdrivers are $100, so here's $100. Or these wrenches are $240. So here's $240 to save my money, and then I'd buy something. And then I got to the point where I moved from shop porter to like the what you'd call a C-Tech, or I'm not quite just the oil change guy. I'm doing like oil change and brake jobs, right? So I go and I have like a basic set of tools. I have like a small Craftsman toolbox that I still have. And so I started buying tools, and then I finally reached a point where I had like days off in the year from school where I worked all day, and then I met the Snap-on guy, and I was able to establish a relationship with him. And then I met the Cornwall guy. I was able to establish a relationship with him, and I was able to build from there. And that's how I started buying stuff. But I looked at what the guys that I worked with had in their toolboxes, and I'm like, okay, well, this is what bare minimum what I need. I need like wrenches, I need sockets, I need ratchets. Do I need an impact? I don't know. And back then, you only had one choice. You could either, pneumatic impact or, a breaker bar. You didn't have there were no electric tools. And so, the younger guys today have more options that are more pitfalls, as I would say, than I did, because I was kind of limited on options. Number one, you were only limited to probably 4 places to get tools. Not like now where you can go to the hardware store and buy a mechanic's tool set. You have way more options.
So when you're young and impressionable and trying to establish yourself, not only in a shop but also in your industry, what kind of influences did you get to help guide your tool purchasing decisions?
Well, the first thing he told me is to get out of the trade and go do something else. And it always kind of bothered me that they said that, because I saw the value in the trade, right? And that's what I wanted to do. But the thing is they always said keep your debt low and then buy quality items. And I'm like, well, how do I pay for this and that? And then they had rules as I got further along. If you borrow it more than twice, then you should own it, and X, Y, and Z. But to understand the era of car that I worked on, I didn't necessarily need a scanner or electric impact or that. I mean, I was able to get away with using, a DVOM, a test light. We had like the shop provided wiring diagrams in these books. I was able to do that. It was a different era of car. It's not like today where so much technology is on the car. We're still talking about carbureted cars or OBD1 cars, and they were still you were still able to work on them with a different level of tools. So the era that came up with kind of dictated what I got. That's why I had more hand tools than a lot of guys do, because you use your hands. I mean, like the brake tools. I have all these brake tools. The reason why I have all these special brake tools is because when I was a C-level tech, that's what I worked on. I did the oil changes and brake jobs. And it wasn't fun. I mean, but at the time I was I knew I was earning my way. I was earning my way up. So I paid my dues, and then I stepped up, and then I stepped up, and then I stepped up, and then I wouldn't say I'm like the greatest tech of all time, because if you ever stop learning, then I think you're doing a disservice to yourself. So did you get a lot of advice from, especially the older guys in the shop, on good ways to manage? I mean, look, I think every technician that I've ever known has resigned himself to realizing he's going to have to always buy tools. Like, no matter how long someone's been in the industry, there's always a new tool to buy. There's always a specialty tool to buy. At some point, you reach the point where maybe you just want something just because you want to treat yourself right, or treat yourself nice to some new tool. But especially when you're coming up in the industry, what kind of advice did you get from guys so that you didn't either buy the wrong things or spend way too much money on something, or Well, I guess the best advice, and I hate to throw a brand out there. So I told the story earlier about I had these Craftsman sockets, and I was taking exhaust bolts loose on a small block Ford, and the socket was trying to round the fastener off, and so the guy I worked for at the time had snap-on sockets. He's like, you need to go use my snap-on socket, and it'll take it right off. And I'm like, so I go over there, and I tell him, I tell you what, if it takes it off, I'll go and buy them. And he goes, sure enough, he goes, and I gripped it, and I was able to back it off, and the next time the snap-on guy came by, I bought the sockets. Now, the way I view buying tools a little bit differently than the people that I worked with. The guys that I worked with were trying to limit their purchases. They didn't want to buy a whole lot of stuff. And my idea is I want to work on everything. I want to be able to work on everything. I want to be able to have access to work on everything. I may not know what I'm doing, but I will have tooling to do it. The tools will never be the reason why I can't repair something. So whether it be European, Asian, domestic vehicles, I always wanted to have the proper tools. Tools don't make you better, but they give you better access to it. So some of the people that I work they didn't want to invest a whole lot of money into their careers. So I went the opposite way of them. But I knew what they had was good stuff. And so I knew that, the Snap-on tools were going to take me farther than my Craftsman tools. I still have my Craftsman tools, and I still use some of them. I just don't use them nearly as much, and I don't rely on them like I do my Snap-on tools. So, and the tool truck, a lot of people beat up tool trucks, and the whole thing about the tool trucks is they provide customer service, and that's what a lot of people miss. And the customer service is what carries you through. Like, if I break a tool, I can call you the minute I break it. Go, Lindsay, I broke XYZ, and you'll be like, okay, I'll go ahead and get another one ordered. That way, hopefully by the next time I see you, I'll have it. And so I can do it with any of the tool guys. If I break a Craftsman tool, I better hope I can get Lowe's to swap it out. And good luck with that. In Harbor Freight, it's an hour and a half there and an hour and a half back. So it's not a small trip. That's 3 hours. In 3 hours, I could have made, I could have bought a completely another set of sockets.
And does that affect your thinking when you look at the value of buying a tool? Do you look at how much money it's going to make you, how much time you're saving, not just in being able to do a job faster, but also eliminating the shopping time that it takes to run around or to get service after the sale.
Yeah, I mean, that's something, like, as you get older, when you first go on there, they call it chrome crack. I mean, you just get addicted. You're just like, oh, I gotta have this or this or this or this. Like, but they do. They call it the chrome crack, and so you gotta get over the kind of that shock. And the good thing was the guys that were selling me tools weren't gonna allow me to fall in those pitfalls, right? I mean, like, they weren't gonna go and sell me something I didn't need. They understood where I was at. Now, guys after that, not so much. They were willing to take advantage of you, but I knew that I needed quality tools because the running around was going to cost me time. Because I didn't grow up and I wasn't in an urban setting. I was out in the country, right? Mm-hmm. So like options were already limited. It was like it's kind of, I was funneled in one direction, and then as far as like the tool purchases, I kind of you kind of have to figure like. I guess maybe.
Well, I mean, you came to lean on your tool guys, or guy. You leaned a lot on the guys who worked with in the shop.
Yeah.
Hopefully they steer you right. I've seen some really good setups where, especially in the diesel industry, like at Freightliner and some of the larger shops, they'll have new guys come into the shop and they'll work under the tutelage of a mentor who, so they come in as an apprentice. They work under this other guy, this senior guy who will show them the ropes, guide them through really every part of their career. Because we got a ton of guys that would come on the truck as apprentices, and they'd get the stars in their eyes and start looking at all the tools. And it's nice to see when they've got their mentor with them who'll say, no, you don't need to buy that. What you really need is this today. Buy this today. But this part's really cool. No, forget what's cool. Buy what you need. Buy what's going to make you money.
So I had something similar. So when I started off, the guy I worked for, it was a smaller shop, kind of like this, and I cleaned up the tools at night, and that was part of my job. Like when we got done with all the jobs at 5:45 or 6 o'clock, I had to stay till it was done putting the tools away. It wasn't required, but it was like I was paid to do it, and I did it because it was I wanted to be part of the shop. And so I learned how to organize the toolbox, but I also learned what we use the most. So. That's why I have a lot of broken sets, because whenever I bought stuff, I didn't buy like the whole set like I do now. I was buying like, okay, well, I need, a 3/8 Allen socket so I can take brake calipers off of Chevrolet pickups. So I bought that one and a 5/16 because I knew that's what I needed. And then I bought, like those wrenches for working on the front end, or I bought some Matco pry bars, which are at my house, or the Matco hose clamps, because that's what I was putting away constantly. I just kept a mental track of, what I cleaned more than anything else. And so, that helped me out. That guided me kind of what I needed. But the guy I worked for, he wasn't really, he kind of push you in certain directions. And he helped out along the way, but he kind of let you make mistakes too sometimes. And then he would say like, like he kind of like, like if you're in a public setting, you're about to make a mistake and somebody's like, like, kind of give me the whole, you're like, reach for you. And you're like, So he did help out. And there was like my first professional toolbox that I got, my large cabinet that I bought. It was a good deal. And he goes up to me and he tells me, he goes, dude, you need to buy this today. And I'm like, I don't want to finance it on the truck. And he goes, I will like pay for it and then you pay me back.
Wow.
And I was like, all right. And so he said he's going to charge me interest, and I don't think he did. And then I worked for him and his wife, and they were real good. They had like a payment schedule, and they took it out of my check, which I was fine with. I was completely fine with, because I had this like toolbox. I only paid like $1,250 for it, and then I had it paid off in 6 months, right? And they were like, they would have allowed me to extend out the payments to today. Like they were real good about that. So no, it was good. He helped me, but he also let me kind of learn on my own. So I'm not constantly like relying on him. Like, oh, can you please help me with my tool purchases? And, it was like, well, you're gonna make some mistakes. You just need to learn it. And I have. I bought some stuff that I should have never bought, and it's either sitting here at my house or I sold it. And I rarely sell tools. I mean, like I'm like just I love having them, so I typically keep them, even if I make a bad purchase. But occasionally I have sold tools.
I see guys regret selling tools regularly. They'll either come to me and ask if I'm willing to take something on trade or if I want to buy something, because they'll say things like, I don't know, I got the standard set of wrenches. I don't know when we work on standard stuff again. And my advice is, I wouldn't get rid of them. You don't know what's going to happen down the line, because things change, and when, especially in this industry, where there's very few lifers anymore. People are going to go to a new shop if they think there's a better opportunity. They're going to find themselves working on things they have not worked on before, and I wonder too how much that is newer guys still getting an understanding of how the industry works, where the stuff you're working on in one shop isn't necessarily the stuff you're working on in another shop. So as you've changed in your career, how did that affect you when you've seen different stuff roll in the door depending on what shop you were in?
So just to kind of give a background, I worked in the same shop for 21 years. And then my second shop I ever worked at was here. And then now I've had a side business for 10, 12 years, something like that. And doing the side business, I just from my instincts that my parents gave me or my core beliefs, I knew I could never go and ask like the shop if I could borrow a tool to go work, make money on the side. And if I did, I came with money first, please rent this tool. I need to go change a tire on the side, whatever it was. Just to, but I knew that. But so from a long time ago, I knew that I always wanted to be like independent, and if I ever wanted to work on something on the side, or I had to take my stuff with me. I had to go and take my stuff. So that's why I wanted to get tools, or that's why I wanted to advance my tools. But I was always afraid of, if I borrow something, then, they're going to get mad at me, or, like if I don't ask. But I've only worked at 2 shops, so that's kind of, and then my third shop is the Fitzy shop that I always brag about. And that's the one we do all the hot rod stuff and all the fun stuff, and that's where I film all the speed wrench stuff at. And
that stuff is way different from the stuff that you work on every day too. So
but as far as like tool purchases, I work on everything. Like the fishy shop, we'll work on equipment. We have a hovercraft. We have hot rods. We have all kinds of just like fun stuff. So you have to be prepared to do that. The shop that I used to work at, in this shop, I probably work on more diesels and heavy line stuff here than I did there. That's why I have the Dana spreader and more run out gauges and whatnot. There I worked on more like, not maintenance stuff, but I had like more like, just general checkouts, like check the car from top to bottom. And then, if you find like, you're not like overselling them, but you're just pointing out, like you'd put it on a priorities list. Like these are all green, these are all yellow, and these are caution areas, or reds, So it's kind of different. As far as like tools, I probably don't work on as many old cars here as I did at the previous shop. So I probably use less of my standard stuff. And then at my other shop, the huge adjustment is I never worked out of a roll cart, or I never kept my tools in my roll cart unless it was overnight, just until I cleaned them in the morning. I kept everything in my box. And I kept my box had metric and standard, like everything. I kept everything in my box. And then I'd only keep just the general stuff in my roll cart. And then when I moved here, I only have 2 stalls, but basically I have 4 because I have like, the other half of the base. So I'm like, I gotta have this roll cart because I'm too busy. I'm gonna work on this, and as soon as I'm waiting on parts, I'm bumping over here and I'm working on something else. So sometimes the cart comes with me, sometimes the cart doesn't. I never used a roll cart before I moved here. So that's a huge adjustment. That's a huge tool I had to buy. And the first roll cart I had an open bottom, and then it's like, you keep anything in there, and the guy that used to work here would borrow it. You're like, what the hell do you need that for? It looks like I use it. Well, like, quit using it and put it back, But that stuff happens. But the roll cart was the biggest adjustment because my stalls aren't like, they're not close to my box. My box is on the other side of the shop. I have to like move across, and so that's why I got the roll cart, and I put everything in the roll cart just so I could roll to a car and I could do almost everything. I need something specially, I come to the box, I come grab it. It's just that way I'm not making trips back and forth. I can just do it all right there.
So is that mostly in the name of efficiency?
Oh yeah.
How much? We've talked before in the past about the value of efficiency and how much more money you could probably earn in a year.
Oh, you'd have to be in like probably 20 plus hours.
Wow.
There's no way that you could, because the second you leave what you're working on, you walk over here, then you have like all kinds of things that intersect you on the way. Like the service writer comes over, a customer walks up, but if you could stay like right on that job and working, a customer will never walk up to you if you're like, elbows, if you're working, they will never come up to you. They'll wait. Most people have like the common decency not to go up to you and go, excuse me, can you come look at my car for me? And you're like, Yeah, I guess so. You know, like under my breath, I'm dog cussing them, and they're like, "Oh, yeah, yes, sir, I sure will." You know, absolutely. Like, oh, thank you. You know, like, but you know, like, but if you're walking back and forth, it's a perfect opportunity to have something to distract you.
Yep.
And so there's 15 minutes gone, or there's an hour gone, or you know, the service writer sees you away from your job, and he's like, "Hey, while you're over," and you're like, "Oh." You know, like, the good thing is with commissioner flat rate, like, you don't have to worry about being motivated. If you're not motivated to work doing that, then you probably need to go find a shop that's got a different payment system.
Which is pretty rare.
Well, I mean, I think the hybrid system's probably it's coming up as a more popular option because guys can get some hourly and then they get some commission on top of that. But, you know, like, some shops, I think, take advantage of guys. I
think that's absolutely the truth.
I mean, I've heard some horror stories where I would have just let them keep my last check and they would have just seen tire marks when I left. You know, like, I went ahead back through the shop to get my tools, but I went to the side of the shop, not that, you know, I haven't worked for anybody that was like scumbaggy like that. That's like, you know, like where they dirtbag your time or whatnot, you know.
But there are some shops that even pay on salary. It's rare. But there are shops that will pay a straight salary.
Man, if you'd have to be a special kind of somebody that I want to take a salary job.
Would it a special kind of somebody in a good way or a bad way?
Well, I don't know. I mean, like, you look at all like a perfect example. So like Jesse James shop or the Martin Brothers, right?
They're all salary. Yeah,
they're all salary, right? And these guys don't have any tools, and they just show up to work. The shop provides everything,
and they're project based, so it's not like they've got somebody coming in off the street asking for something to be done. Well, these things are long-term projects.
But guess what? If you're behind, your butt's staying late. And guess what? You're not getting more money.
Especially if the shop does things like have entries in the SEMA show or are working on things where there are very hard deadlines for them to meet, and failure is simply not an option. Or a TV show.
Yeah, so I know a little something about this because I have a little YouTube channel, right? And so, and when I say a little, I mean microscopic. But but so I do builds, and what people don't realize is I built a car not even from ground up. I did it from I did some heart surgery on it and put some Band-Aids on it, and it still took 6 months to do it.
Yeah.
Because and it's, you know, like I told the guy that owns the truck, I go, there's 1,000 hours in it. Like I'm definitely not, if I'm getting paid by the hour, I think I owe you money. But I mean, it was one of those things, like, people don't understand how hard that is. But, you know, a guy that works on salary, that works that job, you know, like, some weeks you may be making $50 an hour, some weeks you may be making $5 an hour. I mean, like, what's your time worth? And so I don't know if I would want to do, I mean, it would be fun to go and do it a couple times, but it would be fun to do it, like, unless I was the guy reaping the rewards.
No, because expectations are so high, and the demand is so great on these guys, especially if you work on a custom shop or a shop that does one-off builds. You don't have a blueprint. You don't have a precedent.
But that's kind of something fun to do too, though. If it's one-off builds, then you don't ever have to worry about repeating the same thing twice.
That's
true. I mean, like you can strike gold every once in a while. I mean, like, I've worked on cars before where it was just like happenstance. It turned out that good. You're just like, I like it. You know, it looks like something Ford would have done 50 years ago. You know, like, or you know, like somebody would have been proud of that. You know, but then there's other times where you do stuff and you're like, I'm never doing that again. That was an incredible pain in the ass. You know, this was like a complete waste of time. You're like, oh, that was such a bad idea. You go back and you look at it, you're like really proud, and you go back and look at pictures, and you're like, I thought that was okay. I need to drink more, I think.
Because I think the guys in those industries have very different career goals than guys that work in, you know, automotive or diesel repair shops, where you're just working on, you have a different customer base, you have different goals for the stuff that rolls in the door. Man,
and I tell you what, the custom shops, like I said, because we have the fishy shops where we do a lot of custom stuff. Like, people like don't understand how expensive any kind of customization is. Like, there's some people that come in there and they think like $1,000 is gonna completely rebuild their car and make it, you know, fly to the moon, and you're like, $1,000 probably not gonna get you anything. I can tell you to go save your money, you know, because it's true though. I mean, like, it's the stuff is so expensive. There's this old man that I used to know. He had this sign and he owned a machine shop, and he goes, "Speed costs money. How fast do you want to go?" And it's true. Whenever anybody wants to do any kind of customization, you can do Amazon customization, and then you can do stuff that's going to last.
Yeah.
I mean, like, there's two different ways. It's so hard. It's such a hard job. I understand why the guys get paid salary, right? Because I'm selfish employed, so I understand how business works, and I do run my own business. And so I understand how business works, and I understand how people get paid and whatnot. And so you know why these guys make that kind of money. And the guys that work there, they like working there. I mean, it's the same thing. I mean, like, the car may change a little bit, but it's the same process. They work on one particular area of the car. Like, they may be the disassembly guy, they may be the electrical guy, they may be the engine guy, they may be but these shops, they carry like a few guys like that they have like their specialty, as in like here, like, I'm the oil change guy, I'm the head, tech, just like I go from the top tier diagnostic down to, sweeping the floors. So,
well, and I've noticed too that, from a tool supplier perspective, the requirements that guys have really ranges. Like, the guys that work in one custom shop I service hardly buy anything. They're cool guys. I like to go see them, hang out for a little bit and chat, but they hardly buy
the conversation's
tools.
worth more than the business is.
Much more, right? And then there's other guys who, because those guys are specialized. When you're specialized, you only need the stuff that you need to do whatever it is you're doing. You don't need this breadth of tools to anticipate anything coming in the door. So someone like yourself that works on so many different things, your tool requirements are way more extensive than the specialty guy.
If I ever worked at a custom shop, what I would do is I would just be for hire. I wouldn't be like a permanent employee.
Yeah.
Because at some point I would just I don't want to be, I can be in charge of myself. I mean, like, that's it. Like, until you've done it, that's a huge fringe benefit. I mean, like, it really is. Like, people don't understand, like, when you get to make pretty much 85% of your own decisions of when and how you want to work, like where I'm at right now, like, we took off 19 days for Christmas, between Christmas and New Year's. What other shop does that?
Nobody.
But, I worked 141 days up until Thanksgiving straight. So,
Right.
I mean, who else does that? Not many people.
No, because when you're kind of the keeper of your own schedule and doing business the way you want to do business, that's a game changer. And I mean, when we look at some of these shops where the demands are really high on guys to get project stuff done by particular deadlines, because like you referenced Martin Brothers and Jesse James, these guys are cranking out television shows.
Yeah.
And they've got hard and fast deadlines. They're submitting stuff to the SEMA show every year. Those are hard and fast deadlines. They have customers that are paying them a lot of money. And another one is Classic Jaguar. Another shop with long-term project stuff. They're not into the television end of things, but they've got to produce stuff for really demanding customers who are paying an awful lot of money for this
and
work.
So he's got even harder because he's global. It's not just
That's
he's
true.
He's not just local. He's global.
Yep.
And so the global demands are actually probably more intense than a TV show would be, because
I bet you're right, yeah.
his customer base is so, like, it's not limited, but the people that own and bring cars to him, they're like the top 1% of the people in the world.
Oh, there's no doubt.
They're the top wealth in the world.
No doubt about it.
You don't have like a guy that just won the lottery to get the car restored there. You have a guy that like owns the oil fields in Mexico. It takes his car to get restored there. I mean, like, you're talking about these serious 1% wealth, and so that's a completely. I mean, I know them just a tiny bit, but yeah.
And it's not like too you've got this. It's not like you got this customer that you're going to get in one time and he's got some super expensive car and he's going to drop hundreds of thousands of dollars on it. You've got guys that are repeat customers. Like, you've got guys that have huge car collections who will bring you something to work on now, and then in 2 years' time, when you're done and they've got your $600,000 pay coming in for that, they'll give you another car to work on, and another car after that, and another car after that. And then
once you get done with those, then you start servicing those cars.
Correct. And these guys know other guys like them because they all travel and work in the same circles. They all belong to the same clubs together. They all know each other or know of each other. So where do you think a lot of the
That's the
business
whole,
comes
like,
from?
you don't ever want poor friends, because if you have poor friends, they're always hitting you up for money. You know, like, you always want to be the poor friend in a group. You know, like, at least, like, you never ask them for money, but they never ask you for money, which is really good. They're like, oh, we have this really good investment opportunity. Let's go talk to Cass about it. They don't ever do that. They go like, hey, man, I'm a little short on money. Can I borrow like $5? You're like, got the hit the bricks, man. Come on. But that's why it's good to be the poor friend, you know?
Right.
Like, but yeah, they don't have poor friends. You know,
They
like,
don't have poor friends.
Rich people, that's the thing about being rich. They don't have poor friends.
No, and the kind of referral business that gets a shop means that their standards have to be so high.
I will say this: classic Jaguar probably is the highest standards of any shop in the area. I don't think anybody else. I mean, even in like this, like crossing over, like I know that it's apples and oranges, but I would say they were probably the most demanding. And the guy that owns it, like I said, I just know him like a fraction, but that guy is the perfect guy to own that kind of business.
He is, and he and I get along really well. I feel bad because I have a set of micro screwdrivers been on back order forever. You'd think I could get a set of micro screwdrivers for him. Anyway, so he and I were actually just talking last week because they're wrapping up their year, and I asked him how business had been, and he said it was a fantastic year because a lot of the projects they have been working on have got them subsequent jobs coming in because of referrals or these guys that have, you know, larger collections who have stuff coming in. The upshot of all that is that they don't have tolerance for underperforming technicians there, right? You can't walk in the door expecting to learn everything. You've got to walk in the door with some degree of expertise in some discipline.
Or you have to have like that core base that is so good that you can adapt to any challenge like instantly.
Correct.
Like you always know that this is going to be this, or this is going to be this, or this is going to be this. Because that guy, like, I would hate to work for him, but I mean, like, as far as standards go, that guy is the tits. I mean, like,
Think of all you learn. Think of all the cool stuff that you get to work.
I mean, he's not going to teach you anything. What he's going to teach you is good isn't good enough, excellent is the standard, and exceptional is what's expected. You know, like, that's really how it works. I mean, like, if you go in there thinking, like, oh, this is good enough. Like, you know, like, if you go in there, I mean, like, everything has to be, the devil is in the detail. I mean, like, if people don't understand that, like I used to coach youth football. I told kids, the devil is in the smallest detail. Like, I could go pick everything apart, but his standard, the devil's in the detail. Like, if you go look at the tie rod ends, and one tie rod ends, you know, articulated 5 degrees, and the other one's at 0 degrees, he's gonna go point that out and go, why is that like that? You know, that's not good enough. You know, and you're like, well, it's pretty good. You know, pretty good's not good enough. You know, exceptional is what's expected. You know, like, and beyond that is, you know, what makes you better.
And especially in a shop like that doesn't outsource anything. They do everything, soup to nuts, on every car in that shop.
I mean, like, it's amazing. I mean, but it inspires you too, though, when you do custom stuff, and then when you get done, you're like, man, I still can. I would still get fired day one. I still can.
Well, and as a result, a lot of these places have kind of a revolving door. They've got their core group of people who work there and who have worked there for a long time, who are going to continue to work there for a long time. But then they got guys who just kind of come in. They just want to say that I worked for so and so on these cool cars, and then the next thing you know, they're underperforming and they're on the outside looking in again. So the longevity tends to be less in a shop like that, but the guys who last are, like you said earlier, they come in understanding what's expected.
It's the same. Like, this is the Apple, you know, conversion over here, but it's the same in this industry. Like, guys come in and they'll tell you, like, I can do this, this, and this, and then you work with them for, you know, 3 weeks, and you're like, this guy doesn't know anything. You know, you're like, God, they're gonna have to fire this guy. You know, and then the boss goes, what do you think? And you're like, oh, yeah, it's a great hire. And then you're like, what do you really think? He goes, well, he's a sack of dog shit. You know, like, he's terrible. Sorry for using it for YouTube. But I mean, he really is. It's like, you know, like, there's no aptitude test you can go out there and give a guy. The only thing you can do is you can go and talk to guys that used to work with them and kind of figure out who they are. But you really can't judge them based off of that too, because guys will lie too to get rid of people. Because I worked with a guy that I would have sold, you know, like everybody, I would have sold them roses and they would have been getting, you know, wilted flowers. You know, that guy was a sour apple. You know, like, there's a reason why he had 50 jobs. You know, he was not a pleasant person to work with.
What is a good way to evaluate new talent then if they're applying for a job?
Well, first off, you look at what kind of tools they have, and then you use the tool guys to vet them because I mean, you know people pretty well. Like if a guy's in debt a whole lot and he misses a bunch of days, you're gonna know about it, right?
Yep.
So you kind of vet them through people. You vet them through the tool guys. You vet them through the parts stores. You vet them through, you know, other guys that have worked with them, and you kind of go by that. And then you look at what they have, and then you look at their experience and where they worked, what kind of shop they worked at. If they worked at a chain store, all they're gonna do is they're gonna load the parts can and they'll be, you know, firing the parts can away because that's what chain stores want them to do, sell everything, right? But if they come from an independent shop like this, or there's a couple others in town, guys have a good reputation, and then you know them. And if they're making a change, they're making a change because there's something fundamentally wrong at the other shop. So that's a good time to, you know, kind of intersect them, you know, before they go to a different shop. But, you know, there's plenty of shops that I wouldn't work at in this town just because of, you know, who they are, what they are. So,
I mean, everybody either knows each other or knows of each other. It seems like everybody has a reputation, be it a technician, a shop, a tool guy, whoever. It's the circles are fairly small, and we all kind of know what's going on, it seems.
Yeah, and anybody that was like traveling from out of town, or somebody that's like, you just look at their employment record. If they've had 50 jobs, you know, there's a reason why they have 50 jobs. It's not because they have these super high standards. Because they had super high standards, they'd open their own shop.
Yeah,
that's plain and simple. They have 50 jobs because they're an incredible pain in the ass to work with, and you know, either they're just a parts changer, and then they just get caught being, by the time that their start coming back around to them, they're already outside of the shop. You know, like it's the circle theory, right? Like, as this circle's catching this circle goes over here. You know, it's easier to escape. But, you know, like I said, I've worked at 2 shops in 24 years. So, I mean, obviously I've seen a lot. So, I mean, I haven't worked at 50 shops, but, you know, I know like every shop in town almost. You know, I know everybody that works at them. And I wouldn't work at every shop in town. There's a few shops I would think about after this place, but there's some that I'm friends with the guys, but I never work with them, you know. But, you know, I wouldn't want to be friends. I want to see what their reputation is and what people think about them. And that's the good thing about having like the internet now, is because you can go to people's like Yelp reviews, and then you can kind of like, as a technician, as a semi-self-employed person, you can kind of like filter through customer BS like really quick. And it's like, oh, the shop's so great. They went above and beyond. They did this, this, and this, and you know, like, and then you go to the 1-star review, and like, I would never bring my car back here because they're all morons. And then they say like a context clue, and you're like, that's real, you know, because sometimes 1-stars are just fake. People are just starting to be rude. But then there's times when there's like identifiers, like, you know, like, why is this shop always hiring? You know, like every time, you know, like this shop's always hiring. This shop always has all this turnaround. You know, like, why is that? There's a reason why. So, shops and technicians, but it's really hard picking a technician. This is really scary because you're trusting somebody that you're going to work with, that they're not going to be a complete moron, and you're not going to get stuck doing their work and your work. And I had that happen, and it was the whole situation was never good, and it got worse afterwards. But it was like, you know, I was having to do their job and my job, and when you're doing that, it makes it real stressful, and then it's really hard. There's nothing worse than having somebody you don't work with. And I've actually had that a couple times. Like, we had a guy one time that we all thought was going to be like a slam dunk home run. It did not work out. And it was uncomfortable. Like, it was an uncomfortable shop setting. And I was like, man, what if I just left? You know, like, should I just leave just to get out of here? Because, I mean, like, this is not getting any better. And that's kind of like, if I was in charge, I would do this kind of things, hit my ear, but I didn't want to be that guy that goes and gets in the boss's hip pocket and goes, you know what you need to do? You need to get rid of that guy. Because then that's like, I have a different, you know, like I wasn't brought up like that.
But how likely is it, if you see an issue with one of your coworkers, is it fairly likely that the manager or the owner sees the issue with that guy too? Or is it easy to kind of hide that from the guys in charge?
Okay, so if the manager is somebody that's not watching what's going on, but you're working next to like the problem, you know, like, you're well more versed to it. You know, like I'm not a tool thrower. I don't have like large outbursts. It's not my personality. I'll flip out, but I won't throw my tools across the shop or damage a customer's car because I'm pissed off. I just won't do it, right? But when you're working next to somebody that does that, you're like, what the hell is wrong with you? Like, stop doing that. That bothers me. And they're like, oh, you're like, oh.
Well,
like,
I mean, it adds a stressful element to the environment. In fact, I know a guy who recently was like that. He was a tool thrower. He'd get mad. He'd start swearing up a storm and chunking tools across the shop. And the owner had to have a sit down with him and say, look, you got to ratchet it back, man. And of course he didn't. And then he was gone the following week or two after that because he just couldn't get it under control. And you don't need to settle for that kind of element or personality in your shop. It doesn't have to be like that.
Travis, the guy I work with, for however you want to put it, he is as mellow and as
the most mellow person I think I know.
But the whole thing is he
doesn't
get pissed off, and it's just like, it's one of those things. If something messes up or we break something, we'll just deal with it and we'll move forward. I mean, it's a thing. It's nothing. As long as you're doing the right thing 100% or 99% of the time, the one time something bad happens, it's not a big deal. I mean, like, just move on, and you got to work like that as a technician. If you hung on every mistake you ever made, then you wouldn't be in the business. You learn by mistakes. I mean, like, as much as you learn by other methods, you also learn by mistakes. You have to make them every once in a while. You're like, oh, this is not, it's like choose your own adventure. Like, oh, I got killed by dysentery, or, like a bear is eating me on the Oregon Trail. Yeah. But the whole thing is you kind of have to learn by mistakes every once in a while, because you'll make mistakes with part suppliers, you'll make mistakes with tool purchases, you'll make mistakes in diagnosis, and you'd like to think you're 100%, but you're the guy that also has to go and relay information from a service writer that's relayed information from a customer, and then you have to go and interpret that into the car. And so there's a lot of there's a lot of, it's like that tell a friend, pass it on type thing, where you're like, is this real? Is this, like, what's the real concern here?
Well, I mean, it makes you wonder about making mistakes, because a lot of guys are afraid to make mistakes, right? A lot of guys hide them when they do make them. And of course, that only makes things worse. What kinds of mistakes, when you were up and coming, I mean, and even today, because no matter how good we get at whatever we do, we're going to make mistakes. What do you find to be common mistakes in the industry? Are they worth avoiding, or do you need to make them to learn from them?
I mean, it's like sometimes it's like common mistakes are not double checking your work.
Yeah.
Because it always pays to double check your work. It doesn't matter. It could be your fault. It could be a part's fault. Something. Just double check your work. But I know guys like today, like people I am friends with, that won't double check their work. And you're like, what are you doing? Like, you need to do that. And so when I first moved over here, I didn't double check it as much as I did the other shop. And then Travis was like, this is like, I'd like the standard for us to keep. And I was like, no, I'm fine with that. I mean, like, raise the bar. Let's do it. Like, it just makes our work better. The guys don't double check their work. That's a huge thing, because what if you leave a tool? What if you leave, fingerprints on something? That customer pops the hood and it looks like World War III has happened underneath the hood. Like, you got to make sure that nothing's wrong. Like, the radiator cap's all the way on, or the oil filler cap's on all the way on, because if a customer drives home and the oil filler cap's off, there's this big oily mess. Like, those are like common mistakes. The one biggest mistake I ever made was I was working on a car one time. I was doing a timing belt, and I nicked the radiator with my. When I mean nicked, I mean like that, and it leaked. And it was like a 12-year-old Toyota. Like, it was a Lexus, actually. It was a SC400, and the radiator leaked. And my boss was kind of a dick about it. He was like, "Well, you shouldn't have done that." I'm like, "This is an impossible job. I mean, like, I take it out, it leaks. Yeah. I touch it, it leaks. This." And the customer was really unruly, but then my boss it was easy as a learning experience. Like, he was like trying to like help me along with it. I understood what it was, but it was a pretty big mistake, because it was expensive.
Yeah.
Like, I've had other times where, like, I had a car fall off a jack one time. It rolled off a jack and it damaged the balance, or damaged the pulley for the belt. I was like, I was jacking it up, and we had these really iffy jacks, and it slipped out and it damaged it. And I felt like a real idiot after that. I was like, God, I'm definitely C-rate today. And believe it or not, that happened, and the radiator happened within a day of each other.
Oh boy.
Yeah. It was not a good week. Come to think of it. There's other times, like I had an issue one time with a 544 where the cam had spun, and it was one of those things where we didn't have the right tools, And that's why I was, like when you look over here, I have the right tool for the job,
Yeah.
or at least I'd like to think, because we didn't have the right tooling in it. It was just it was a mistake, but I just adapted it, overcame, just went through it. It's no big deal. Like I tell everybody, you make a mistake, you own it, you move on. Don't hide it. It's like I tell my kids. I mean, like, don't lie to me about it. If you screw up, tell me. We'll deal with it. We'll move forward.
Yeah.
Not a big deal. Like, don't point fingers. Don't say, well, I did this and then this. And, it is what it is. Just own the mistake. Don't lie about it. It's real simple. Like if you make mistakes, oh well, happens. I mean, like, just make sure that the customer doesn't take the car with it broken. Like, as long as the car
Right.
leaves repaired and it's what they wanted, then that's all you got to do. I mean, like, at the end of the day, you're just got to make sure the customer's satisfied. And sometimes, you take one in the cheek, and then sometimes you make up for it. But I always tell the guys this: so if you're on commission, if you're worried about time, you're probably not gonna make any money. The second you stop worrying about time, it's like you just like, let's just get the jobs done. You have a list, you know what you're gonna do, go get it done. You get it done, and then before you know it, you're like, oh man, I'm like doing pretty good. Like the time has just hit me perfectly. But too many guys are like, I'm not getting the right jobs. Like I worked with a guy that I always thought I was getting all the gravy jobs. And I'm like, it's not gravy. I have a system I use that just looks easy. But when you're on commission, the brake job is not the job you want to get, because you have to hump it to do it, unless you work at a shop that charges, 2.5 hours for a brake job.
Now, how long does it take you when you're growing your career to get to the point where you're feeling proficient with certain things, and that you feel like it's not the chore or the struggle it used to be, because you know more now and you've seen it a few times? And
oh well, the good thing is like the original shop I worked at, like I was the oil change and the brake job guy, and I did 1,000 brake jobs, and I had all kinds of goofy problems come back, and then a lot of times they weren't my stuff I had done, but I had to figure out why I was doing that. Like, like we had one where it was on this Dodge van, and it had this vibration, and I did a front brake job, and it comes back and it's got a vibration during braking. Well, what turned out was it had a vibration all the time, which was more noticeable when it was braking, because the shocks were bad too. And what it was, the tires had a bounce. So I threw the tire on the balancer after the second time I machined the rotor, and then poof, right there. Like, instantly saw there was a bad tire. So we rotated the tire. The boss went and drove it this time. Done deal. Right, but I did 1,000 brake jobs. Like, literally the first year I worked on a car, I probably did 1,000 brake jobs. I did, like I said, it's like drum brakes, and then front brakes, the conical bearings. We didn't have like a ton of pop-off rotors when I first started working in the business. There's some, but not many, not like they are now. So you're constantly cleaning, repacking bearings. So you're learning how to check bearings. You're learning how to set preload. You're learning how to look for the little pitfalls. Like, is the seal gonna seat right? It's just stuff you learn. Like, and then your presentation. Do you when you go and pack bearings, is it grease all over the place? Can somebody tell like Pigpen has been here? You know what I mean? And so those are the things you do. So you work your way up, and then you go from that to you start doing more engine stuff. You start doing tune-ups and diags and stuff like that. And so you gotta, you progress on. And so then the next year I did 1,000 tune-ups and timing belts. Like, one year I did so many timing belts, when they would come in the shop, the service writer was bringing them to me because I could get them out faster than the other guys. Like, I was that fast. I'm not bragging, but.
It's a benefit of repetition.
At the same,
right?
at the same level, I'm doing more than anybody else in the shop. But it's like transmissions. I was like the R&R transmission guy. I mean, I was like, the shop I worked at, I was like kind of I wasn't the head guy, but I was kind of the head guy. But when a transmission would come in, it would instantly get thrown to me because I could have it out faster than anybody else. And my boss is like, well, you have a system for doing it. And I'm like, I don't know if it's a system. I just, like, I have a setup. Like, I know exactly what I need in my mind. Like, this, and this.
So does that leads us to an interesting topic, because if you've got certain things that you work on consistently, does it benefit you to have, say, a group of tools that you need to do a brake job, a group of tools that you need to time out? Are there certain ways that you can set up your work environment so that you're ready to go when stuff like that rolls around?
Yeah, I mean, it's like my roll card. I mean, how my roll card's set up, like it's meant to do almost 99% of the jobs. Like, when I get to like putting camshaft seals or crankshaft seals in, I have my seal installer and my puller, right? I'll go and grab that differently. But if I'm going to do a timing belt, I can do everything in a timing belt. 99% of it I can use my roll card. That's why I was set up, because I don't want to walk back and forth. That's where you get those intersections of that knock you off course. That's what happens there. So but if you're a young tech, I mean, like a general set of sockets and wrenches, pry bars will get you a long way. And then everything else, if you work in a shop, they should be willing to help you. And if they're not, then it's not a very good shop. You know, like if you're not trying to grow somebody up to the next level, if you don't want somebody to take your position, then you're not doing your job right. Because the one thing I noticed, and I'm probably getting off topic a little bit, there's a huge gap in the industry. And I kind of know what date it started. And then there's the older guys that don't want to help the younger guys. And then there's this gap, though, where you have guys that are like my age, and then behind me there's a gap back to the next group because of the economy at the time. And it wasn't profitable to be in the business. And it almost ended a lot of shops. So, I started in the mid to late 90s. And then, I got to work on carbureted cars, OBD1 cars, OBD2 cars. So I had this this base of knowledge, but I kind of have an idea how everything works. Well, then you get guys that come in behind me that are just OBD2 guys, and then we get to 2008. 2008 is cash for clunkers year, right? Or 2009, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And the industry almost ended at that point. Like there was almost no repair industry. There was no work.
Because everyone is preferring to buy a car as opposed to getting it fixed.
The biggest pile and drag it into a dealership, and they would give you $5,000 for it, and they would finance you with no credit, bad credit. Like you could have multiple repossessions, and they were financing you. There was no work, and the work you got wasn't good. Like you were working on somebody's junk. You may get like service work and junk, and it was tough time. And so there's a gap in the industry, and you can see it. And then you have older guys that were in before me that started in like the points and condenser up to the electronic ignition era, and they don't want to help the younger guys, and they don't want to learn anything about newer cars. They're like, I'm almost out of the trade. I don't need to learn anything else. And you're like, that's a dumb thing to say. Like, why would you do that? I mean, like, do I want to work on Priuses? No, it's not because I don't want to learn to work on Priuses. I don't like the people that drive Priuses, right? You could tell. They're always the one driving 15 under in the fast lane. They're always the one acting like a jackass. But do Priuses intrigue me? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like, I love how stuff works. I love learning to learn how stuff works.
Yep.
I mean, like, I'm never going to stop learning. If I stop learning, it means that they're probably throwing dirt over the top of me. So, but that's how I look at it. But it just irritated me when older guys wouldn't help the younger guys. And I was like, you're like a steward of the trade. It's your job to help the trade survive. You're not a one and done guy. You're not the end all like, oh, it's Jesus, he's going to go away now. Like, you're not that guy. It's your job to take what you know and pass it on down to the younger guys and make sure they hold a certain standard.
And I think there's more guys that come up in the industry, and particularly in the diesel field. I don't see it nearly as much in automotive, but who go to school first and who actually get a formal education. They come out and they get into a situation where they can walk into a place like a Freightliner or some other diesel shop, and they can get some structure there because there's other guys whose job it is to help them along. It kind of seems like automotive is different in that regard.
Well, I'll say this. So the route I took was I was supposed to go to like one of those high-dollar trade schools, like UTI was where I was supposed to go. And then I was going to go to Wyotech to go to a racing school there. But at the end of the day, I talked to the guys, and they're just rifling you through the program. They're just collecting your money. They slap a sticker on you. They make you look all nice and shiny. And I went to a community college. I went to a trade program at a community college. And I'll tell you this, the community college, I got way better education. But did I learn any one specific thing? No. I learned how to learn, right? And I learned how to learn at an accelerated pace. And that's what college is. You don't learn any one particular thing unless you're going to be a surgeon or something. But you learn how to learn at an accelerated pace. So you learn how to take information. And one of the things I used to say in trade school was whenever we had tests, it's like, why aren't we using our notes? Because if you know where the information is in your notes, you should be able to use it. It's like when you're working on a car, because before I went to college, I also worked in the industry. I was, the lower end guy, but I worked my way up. But I also went to trade school. And, I went this route because I was a father really young, and, I had responsibilities, so I had to go make money, but I also wanted to further my life, and I knew getting an education was important. But, that's, I went a little bit different route, and I also knew that the guys that were going to like UTI and Wyotech maybe weren't getting 100% what they needed, but a lot of guys got good jobs because of it, and they got to go into good situations. And some of those big shops like Freightliner, they'll take you in, they'll apprentice you.
Yep.
And if you're worth half a salt, they'll keep you, they'll do whatever it takes. But too many guys go to trade school and they come out and they think they know everything. And,
Because you're still walking in on the ground floor. It's not like you're going to walk in at the, no matter what your education is, you still have to learn how it's done.
And we're gonna get on a whole tangent about these young people. These young kids here, they think they should be making top dollar within a year of working. You're like, not a chance in hell. I worked for nothing for years before I finally started getting decent paycheck. Like, guess what? You can earn and burn too, sucker. You're not gonna just get it, but that's the problem with kids today. Oh, kids today.
You sound a lot older than.
You sound a lot older than 42. Kids today. No, but so like Robert's a perfect example, right? Because Robert's like 25.
Yeah.
And Robert wants to be like the top pyramid right now. He's like, I should be there. I'm like, yeah, you haven't earned enough days. You haven't lived enough days. I tell my son this. My son's roughly Robert's age, and I tell him the same thing. I'm like. He's like, I should do this, or I should be this, or this, or this. I'm like, son, you haven't lived enough days. I know more than you because I've lived more days. I'm not smarter than you. I've screwed up way more than you have.
Because it's a very real phenomenon in this world that you have to just put your time into things if you expect to.
Shocker,
right? And you may think it's unfair. You may not like it. You may have whatever skill and knowledge that you believe you need to get to a higher level, but until you put your time in, it doesn't happen.
Oh man, fair is one of those. Fair's a place where guys wear funny hats and judge farm animals. That's what a fair is. Like, seriously, there's nothing fair in this world.
No, there really isn't.
Because there could be a guy that comes in tomorrow. He could have 3 years of experience, and he could be 10 times better than me. And if you're not willing to accept that as a technician, and you think because you have time on the job, you got to get past that too. Yep. But should a guy that has minimal tools, that has minimal experience in the trade, should he get paid as much as me? Not a chance in hell.
So what can you tell from a guy and his tools?
Oh man, you walk in there and my number one pet peeve, I do this all the time. If they have a claw hammer in their toolbox, I will rag their ass over. They're like, what are you doing with a claw hammer, bud? You a carpenter or something? You got some trade? They're like, oh, I use claw hammer all the time. I'm like, what the hell uses a claw hammer?
One of our bigger accounts is one of the rubbish companies, and they have a hard time hanging on to guys because it's not an attractive industry to be working on, but it's steady work. You'll never want for a job, and it pays pretty good. But the problem is they can't always retain really good people, so sometimes they can't be as choosy as they want when guys come in the door. So I walked in the shop one night, and the guy's trying to remove what was he trying to remove? Oh, he's wailing away on a U-joint. And he had what he called his kitchen hammer. It's a wooden handle, like a 16-ounce wooden handle claw hammer.
Oh my gosh!
The other guys in the shop are just rubbing their eyes. They're like, "No, please use mine."
Yeah, you're hurting my ears.
And I said, "Why do you call it your kitchen hammer?" He goes, "It's the one I keep in the drawer in my kitchen."
Don't forget your tools when you leave.
He didn't last long, and it was.
I wonder why.
It was one of those things that you see. I think people's tools give you a very valuable insight into their frame of reference and their perspective, and also their experiences.
Well, I'll tell you this: these are my 3 pitfalls for young technicians. Whenever they're buying tools, I'll give you this. This is probably answers more questions than not. The 3 things that young guys need to stay away from: toolboxes, scanners, and electric tools. They need to stay away from those 3 things because all those are all debt waiting for replacement. I mean, they're all debt. That's all it is debt, because you're not going to be able to buy a toolbox outright. You're not going to be able to buy a scanner outright. You're not going to be able to buy electric tools outright. The biggest problem is they get into those 3 things and they are just swimming in debt. And then they can't go and buy hand tools. You can't buy anything else you need. Like a DVOM is a requirement. You must have a DVOM to work in this. A power probe is an accessory. It's a nice accessory to have. It's real handy, but a DVOM can do not the same stuff, but it can get you to the same place. And that's why a lot of trade schools want you to have one.
Yeah.
But too many guys fall into the pitfall where they're in the toolbox payment, they're in the scanner payment, and they're in the electric tool payment. And they don't have anything else for tools. And you go and look in their box, and it's like, I could throw plenty of people under the bus on that.
If I could impart one thing on new guys coming in, it would be to echo that, particularly about the toolbox. Oh. My heart breaks for guys who just got railroaded with buying a snazzy new, very expensive toolbox, and they don't even know if they want to make a commitment to this as their career.
And they're getting them at the trade school level too.
Oh yeah, they get them early.
Snap-on and all those. I'm going to use Snap-on. It's just the fixture name.
They're one of the ones that does it most.
But they offer you all these deals where like, oh, we can give you a 50% off, MSRP. Like I guarantee you, I still paid less for that box than they would have.
I'm sure, yeah.
But so the only thing that I think the younger guys have an advantage over me for, as far as tool storage goes, is like back in the day, we didn't have a roll cart like that back in the day.
Right.
My Craftsman toolbox wasn't that big.
No.
But also the Craftsman toolbox back then was only like $400 for the top and bottom and the middle cabinet.
You can still do pretty good for yourself. I know Lowe's is now selling the Craftsman brand, but you can do really well for yourself getting a Husky box from Home Depot, getting a U.S. General box from Harbor Freight.
Oh yeah,
There's nothing wrong with those boxes.
I would look for a used box. I would never, or I would look for a roll cart. I wouldn't even look for a box if I was starting out, because I'm not gonna have all this stuff.
No way.
I might have a battery charger I have to plug on the wall for a flashlight, but more than likely I'm probably using a flashlight with something. You must have a flashlight to work on this job. You must have an inspection mirror. Those are like general things. You must have sockets and ratchets. Do you need standard? Do you need chrome? No, you can get away with the Sonix Impact brand. It will get you by. It will make you money until you can add on. You don't need to go buy a 9-foot-long toolbox. You don't need to go buy a scanner within the first year you're working on cars. If the shop that you work at doesn't have a scanner, you need to go find another job.
Yeah, and I remember when I first got into this industry, and there was a young GS getting on my truck, and he started asking about all kinds of stuff. And this is still when I was beginning to understand how the industry works. He was asking about all kinds of expensive stuff, and I'm thinking, pretty cool. He thinks, he wants to buy this. And then I started realizing what he would be doing to himself, right? Because as he and I conversed over time, I realized he said, I'm not going to be doing this forever. I want to become a cop. I'm like,
don't buy anything.
Right? And that's what I'm thinking. Why are you looking at the expensive stuff on a tool truck of all places?
Yeah.
Right? And that's when I took that to heart, and I started telling new guys particularly, until you find value in the higher costs that you see on a tool truck, anybody's tool truck, stay off of them.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to do oil changes and brake jobs, you don't need flank drive set of wrenches.
No.
I mean, get a decent set of sockets. I mean, you can get away with a set of sockets, and a ratchet will take you a long way. You don't need to go and buy all this stuff. But too many people get caught with that little chrome crack syndrome. They get hooked on it.
And is there certainly a phenomenon of a new guy seeing how the veteran guys in the shop, what they own, what they use, the kind of image that conveys to them, they want to be like those guys.
I mean, you want to have like the big nice toolbox, but you also have to think, it takes the time to get there. It's the whole thing. It goes back to the whole you can't want it now. I mean, you have to want it all the time, but you can't expect to have it now, because if you do, it'll just run you out. You get out of that millennial mentality where they're like, I have to have it now. If I don't get my way, I'm gonna lay on the ground and cry. Well, start getting ready to wipe up tears, there, youngin. But there's older guys that are the same way. You just have to. It's something that's earned. It's not given.
For sure.
And younger guys, until you get to that certain point, till you make that crescendo over, if you're on the way up, you just need to do what your hand tools, do whatever it takes to get up to that next level. And then once you get to that next level, you kind of figure it out. And if you work at a decent place, they're always going to help you to get to that next level. You know, they're never going to let you go like, well, you need to buy everything you need to know.
Especially when they see you making the investment in the tools that you're going to need to get to that next level.
But, you know, like guys that are just scratch. Like I've worked with people before that, you know, they had what they had and they weren't going to buy anything else, and they were going to borrow whatever they needed. And there's a difference, because if he's at that level, he needs to own it, right? Yeah. That's the whole, if you use it more than twice, you need to own it. And that's what pisses guys off in the shops, that they hate a certain person. You know, you're like, like, oh, can I borrow this all the time? Like, no, that makes my job easier, not yours. I'm not coming to look for it in your toolbox. Yeah. You can go buy this. Well, I can't afford it. Not my problem. You know, like, I couldn't afford it either. I made do. I sacrificed. I overcame. You know, like, boo-hoo. You know? It's so callous. Millennials hate me. You know, I'll probably, you know, they probably call me boomer, even though I'm not old enough. I'm not a boomer. I'm not a boomer. I don't think you are either.
No, we're Gen Xers.
Yeah. Bite me, youngins.
We've avoided the meme.
Yeah. Oh, it's so much fun. I love picking on young people. They get so butthurt. You know, I was a youth football coach for like 12 years, and like the kids, like when I first started out, the kids were pretty tough. And as I got along farther, the kids got inevitably weaker. And I like not physically weaker, like mentally weaker.
Well, sure. Like, yeah.
And I'm not talking because they got younger. I met some young kids along the way that were pretty tough. You'd be amazed at what a 5-year-old's seen in life. You know, like, and some of those 5-year-olds are harder than, you know, a whore's heart. You know, they're some tough little guys. And you know, but then you get these kids that are like, mom and dad, they might as well have just popped them off the tip like 10 minutes before practice, because they're over there like wiping the milk off the sides of their mouth. You're like, what are you doing? Like, this kid's like, you're like, okay, you made a mistake. You got to go run poles. No. Like, anyway, look at, I'm going to swat this kid into the ground. No, tell me no again. See what happens. But it's one of those things. I mean, you know, like the younger kids, I don't know if they don't know what work is, or I mean, I haven't worked with anybody really. Like I said, Robert's the youngest person I've worked with. You know, and he's not terrible, but every once in a while you have to kind of like slap him upside the head and get him going in the right direction.
Well, you know, I don't think he has a sense of entitlement that people like to pin on the millennial generation. And I know he's learned a lot so far in his short career and relatively short life about, you know, better ways to be, better ways to manage his own expectations about his life and his career and his goals.
I'll say this: he spent as much time in the shop, I bet, as some people have, like, that are 10, 12 years older than him.
Sure.
Because he was a little kid back then. I mean, like, his dad and I were good friends. Yeah. So he was a little kid, and he used to pal around with us all the time. You know, like, he'd tag along, and he was always taking something apart. Was he putting it back together? No, but but he was always there. So I'll give him that. But, you know, he's still a kid, and he still has to learn, and you still want to help him out. You know, like, you work with him, you want to make sure he does the right thing. Right. That's like my thing. Like, you always want to make sure the standards are there with him. You know, like, hey, make sure you pass this along. You know, the guy I started with, he had some high standards. I mean, like, he wasn't the easiest guy to work for, and he'd tell you when something wasn't right. But you know what? He also worked at Classic Jaguar too, like back in the day. He knows what expectations are. You know, like, and so and obviously he's in business for a reason. You know, like, I mean, because he has a set of standards that yield success to have a business.
And oftentimes that's the difference between what makes or what breaks a business. Any business, it doesn't matter what industry it is. Are your standards high? Are they consistent? Do you demand and expect that everybody, you know, from the top on down, is going to maintain and meet those standards and expectations?
But that's a scary thing, because like I don't want to have any employees. You know, in my, like, eventually I'll probably own my own business, or I do own my own business. Really. Yeah. I mean, but like when you hire people, like, I don't trust anybody.
It's tough.
Like,
it's
really
difficult.
Travis, do you want to come work for me? You know, it's like, hey, it's my turn to be the boss now.
I mean, you trust him. He's a trustworthy guy.
But
that's,
but to find somebody that's hard. You know, Robert would be another good one. But you know, there's plenty of guys I've worked with, and I'll always say this: like, I try to never talk bad about somebody behind their back, or, you know, wouldn't say their face, but there's guys that I would never hire
Sure.
if I was boss. And that's
Of
how
course.
that's how I could qualify my experience with them, or not qualify, but that's how I could assess my experience with them. I wouldn't hire them in a professional setting.
Right.
You know, and so that might sound bad, and some people might be like, oh, you know, like,
But you have to be that way, and if you don't understand that, then you don't own a business. Because people who own or even manage a business, if you're in a position to be hiring people, you have to be choosy, and you have to find trustworthy people. I learned I learned a number of interesting things in my previous career as a manager, and now that I'm a business owner. Look for three things in people. Look for ambition, intelligence, and integrity, and make sure they have integrity, because without that, the other two will kill you.
yeah.
Right? And it's not easy to find, and that means it might take you a long time to hire the right person for a particular job.
Yeah, but it's worth it at the end, though.
It absolutely is.
Because then you don't have to babysit them all the time, because there's nothing worse than doing your job and their job.
And the wrong kinds of managers believe that they need to be micromanaging their employees.
Oh, that's the worst thing in the world.
You
to
don't.
do.
Yeah, you got
But
it.
the other thing is, if somebody's micromanaging you, it might be a reason.
And that situation doesn't generally last very long either. The guy hates being micromanaged, he's going to go.
Yeah.
Or the manager has to micromanage because the guy can't do it.
I've seen it both ways.
yeah,
I'm not
oh,
saying,
yeah.
I mean, everybody's had somebody micromanage them before, and you like absolutely hate it. But you learn how to have some thick skin in life, and you just kind of deal with it and move forward. And if you work with them in a professional setting, you sit down with them at some point, and you let them know that you don't need to be coddled all the time.
Right.
Like I do. I'm a butterfly. Let me fly. Let me spread my wings and fly. But no. But there's guys, if they're consistently getting micromanaged, there's a reason. Because you can't be trusted. I mean, this hands down. That's why I'm over your shoulder. So at my previous job, for a while, I got to have an apprentice work under me, and it was sweet because it was it actually helped me with my job, because I was able to do the work, and I was instilling knowledge into this guy, but it helped me want to learn more, so I would make sure I was telling him the right stuff, and it made me more efficient. And
Yep.
I loved having it. But then he progressed on where he needed to move forward. And so then I ended up, back working by myself again. But it was fun for a while. And then an apprentice, I was like, oh, yeah, this is great.
And it's nice, too, that you're the kind of person that doesn't feel a misplaced sense of ownership, that you can't turn over something to other people to work on. You can't delegate it. You can't allow other people to work on it, because those are horrible people to work for. When you're the kind of person who says, no, I want somebody else to come up and work on this stuff and take these responsibilities on.
But it's good but you had to be comfortable with them too.
You do.
Because if not, if I wasn't comfortable with them, I wouldn't let them do anything.
Right.
But I was like, okay, go do this, this, and this. Or I'd go and check something out. I'm like, okay, take this apart. And he's going to be busy for 2 hours. And that gives you 2 hours to get set up for the next thing. Or you kind of have a course of action. And then you can go and take a break and walk over and go check on him and see how he's doing and make sure he's doing it the right way. And then you have to have somebody that's honest enough to tell you when they don't know something.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
It's fine in this industry. If you don't know something, I have that happen every day. I don't know plenty of stuff. But as long as you're honest with yourself and you go and I don't know this, I need to figure out what the answer is, then that's exactly what you need to be. But if you go and you just think and you do it and you screw up, then that's when the problem starts. But the guy that was apprenticing, he was great, man. He was he would go and he would work hard, and he'd ask the right questions, and I never had any problems with him.
Yeah.
I mean, he always did great. I was happy for him when he got to move up. It was a good move for him. It kind of sucked for me, but I was.
Well, yeah.
And I don't really feel like ownership that he did better. It wasn't on me. It was on him, because it took drive from him to do it. I was just kind of the vessel of opportunity that helped propel him forward. I wasn't any one particular thing. It's kind of I have some kids that play football for me, that play college football, and my parents are like, oh, you must be really proud that kid played college football for you. And I'm like, well, to be honest with you, I wasn't his parent, so I didn't give him the DNA traits, and I was only there for a small portion of his life. His parents were the guiding force, right. And then his internal desire to do better. I was just the vesicle for success. You know what I mean?
It's cool to be a part of it, though. Even though the
I
part
was just shoving him through the Golgi body. You know what I mean?
Right, but that's as legitimate an influence as someone can have, and I think that it's cool in this industry too. We as a tool company, we service a lot of different kinds of customers, and although we're not the reason people succeed, it's kind of cool to be a part of stuff that has is more renowned than what we do, because we do service shops that have TV shows and work on very high profile projects, and it's cool to be part of that. It's great to be part of the mom and pop shops where people rely on us just to make a living.
Yeah,
you know,
no,
I mean, it's all cool.
You know, like the tool guys, I have personal relationships with every tool guy that services the shop.
Yeah.
You know, like we're friends, and the Snap-on guy, he and I are friends. You know, like I've hung out with him before at the racetrack. Like Tim used to work for him, and Tim and I are friends. And the Mac guy, I work on his stuff, and he and I are friends. I don't have a Matco dealer, and we don't have a Cornwall dealer. And the Cornwall dealer wouldn't have to worry about being friends with me because I wouldn't be friends with him.
All right, so there's one guy then.
Yeah, well, there's one guy. Well, so it would be his fault. So I'm gonna bag on Cornwall really hard right here because it's an opportunity. Like, did you see a whole lot of Cornwall stuff in my box? Because I have it hidden.
In fact, I didn't.
In fact, I didn't. I wonder why. So when I first started off, the Cornwall guy, like when I was full time, the Cornwall guy was like one of the first guys I ever saw, right? And he was kind of a dick, you know. Like I'm not gonna lie, and you know what I'm talking about. So, anyways, I'll give you an example or an incident, not an example. But what happened is he would come by and his prices were similar to Snap-ons, right? And you're like, it's kind of weird. Why would I buy this and not a Snap-on? And so he would come by, and I bought an air ratchet from him. I bought a bunch of stuff from him. I bought like some ratchets, some extensions, and some other stuff from him. So I bought this air ratchet. It was an Ingersoll air ratchet, and it kept screwing up. This damn button kept sticking on it, and it stick and stick and stick and stick. And I'm like, I had to take this back like 6 times. And I'm like, we're on the 6th time. I'm like, I should be getting a new one or my money back. Neither option was given. And he's like, well, this is the approved method that they told us to do. And I really think he just BS'd me on the approved method figure. I'm like, I really feel like you're just BSing me around. You're just trying to get out of doing like the real work. And so finally the ratchet sticks, and I break a starter. Installing a starter, like it sticks and it spins around and it smacks the lift, and when it does, it snaps the starter housing. It just cracks it. So I mean, like it's a $30 starter because it was on like a 70s model car. It was a reman starter because that's all they had. But the fact that it did that, and two things were my fault. Number one, it was my fault for using that for the tool and not like blowing up or knowing that there could be a problem. And number two is my fault for not going and saying, look, this isn't good enough service.
Right.
You know, like this is what you're going to need to do. So what I did is I took that air ratchet and I smashed it into the floor as hard as I could, and it snapped the body in half. And the guy's like, how's that air ratchet working out for you? I go, it works so well, it stuck again, and I smashed it in half, so I'd never be tempted to use it again. And I bought, the next day the Snap-on guy came by. I was still making payments on a broken ratchet. And the Snap-on guy came by, and I bought another ratchet from him. And I told him the story, and he goes, he gave me a discount. He's a really solid guy. But I had bought a lot of stuff from him by that point. So he gives me a discount on the ratchet because he knows that what had happened.
Yeah.
And it was hysterical though, because the Coyle goes like, huh? I was like, and he was like, why did you do that? I'm like, I'm not gonna put up with this anymore. And then the final straw was I had a Cornwall box, and the lock took a dump, right? And so I had to drill the lock out so I could get my toolbox open because my key was complete. It was one of those like barrel keys, right?
Yeah.
And so the key stripped out, so I can't use the key. I have to get into my box. So I drilled the lock out, which I do know how to break into toolboxes, unfortunately. So we go, the guy I worked for, he was like, okay, look, this is what we need to do. Because I think he had a Coke machine one time, he had to do the same thing. Yeah. So we drilled the lock out, we took the tumblers out. And so I'm using a pick to lock and unlock my toolbox every day. It takes 9 months to get a lock. I'm like, I call Cornwall. Like, can you walk back to the toolboxes and go snag me a lock? It doesn't have to be this key. Send me 2 new ones, and they're like, oh, we can't do that. You have to go through your dealer.
Has to go through the dealer, yeah.
And I'm like, this is a load of crap. Yeah. Like I had a Snap-on. I'm gonna get off of Cornwall for a second. I'll get on the Snap-on. I had a Snap-on dealer one time. This guy's like on permanent hold. Like you can't get anything.
Yeah.
And so I sent an impact in. He's like, yep, they said they couldn't fix it. And I was like, BS. You didn't send it in because you can't send it in. You didn't want to admit to it. So I called Snap-on. I ordered the parts. I went and fixed it myself. And he goes, did you get a new impact? I go, nope. I fixed the one that you said you couldn't get fixed. I ordered the parts from Snap-on. Yeah. And subsequently, he didn't last but like a few more weeks.
Yeah, and that's a common issue, unfortunately, where especially companies like Snap-on and some of these other large franchise companies drive their dealers into such high debt that they can't afford to run their own businesses.
Because they want them to use that high pressure sales tactic model. Because our current Snap-on guy, I mean, like, he's a heck of a nice guy, but he's trying to sell you something all the time.
Yeah, oh yeah.
I mean, like, he has to. He has to sell or die. I mean, like, it's like that everlasting machine. You can't steer that machine in any one direction. If you try to steer it, it's just going to eat you. You know what I mean?
That's true.
And so he wants you to go out and make those Joe mistakes, like buying a scanner, a box, or electric tools. That's where that's the only thing that sucks for them. That's the good thing with you is you're like easy going. You're like, oh yeah, you want to buy it? Oh, great,
right? Because we're not in that much debt. We can manage our finance. And
darn.
And the thing that we do is we manage our business like a business. We don't. I don't. And a lot of
our Mac guy. He just comes to hang out most of the time. He's just glad that he gets to stop in the shop. I mean, he's a great guy, but, he doesn't care if you buy anything. He's still going to come by. Like, he goes up to the tire shop. I'm telling him, like, what are you doing? I'm like, I wouldn't sell them nothing. I mean, like, if they don't have cash in hand, I still wouldn't sell them nothing. And he's like, well, I just don't, like, I feel like I stopped here. I should go by there and go. I'm like, the hell with those guys. Like, those guys aren't going to buy anything that's not like something they can smoke or blow up their nose. I don't care if any of them see this either. I would tell to their face. I have no problem saying it to them.
I thought they'll see it anyway.
Honesty is the best policy. You know what I mean? Like, when I wouldn't say anything behind their back, I wouldn't say it to their face. No. I really don't care if they know or not. It doesn't bother me one bit. But, like I just, like you guys are all really easy to get along with. But the Cornwall, I'll never do business with Cornwall again. That basically is what I was getting at. Is between their rep, their sales rep, and then their customer service, it sucked. And I was like, the hell with that. I'm never going to buy another Cornwall tool again. That's why I took all my Cornwall tools off my line, off of everything I use. They sit my toolbox. They're like my first tool. They're my first tool collection. But other than that, they have no sentimental value to me. I mean, they have some sentimental value to me. They have no functional value to me. Like, I'm not going to rely on the tools because I can't rely on the service. So I know there's a Cornwall guy that comes in town, but if he ever came by, I would tell him, like, look, man, you're probably a great guy. I guess I'm never going to buy anything from you. It's because you sell Cornwall tools.
And that happens at a lot of shops where, the owners or the managers will tell the other tool guys, you're welcome to come by. I don't know how much business is here for you, because they've been burned in the past. And, everyone deserves a chance. But sometimes that bridge is already burned.
Man, it was just it went too long. It was one of those things where you fool me once, shame on me. You fool me twice, shame on you. Or fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. I'm not getting pulled the third time with Cornwall.
Sure, yeah.
I was just like I'll give you another example. So our Matco guy went out of business roughly around the time that Cornwall stopped coming around, and so I owed him $147. And I was like, oh man, I wanted to pay him because he was a nice guy, and he was having like a clearance sale, and I bought some stuff from him because I knew he was going out of business, and he had his clearance sale, and I knew he was going out of business, and I just didn't finish paying him because he's like, oh, I can pay me cash. I'll see you in like a week or two. I think I was sick one day, came by, so it was like 11 months later. It was some like weird like number, like it was like 9 or 11 months later. I see him at Walmart. And I walk up to him, like, hey, man, I still owe you money. He was like, don't worry about it. I paid him in the Walmart at like 11 o'clock at night. It was like the weirdest deal. But I was like, he goes, you don't have to pay me. I'm like, yeah, I do. We made a deal. I have to pay you. Yeah. And so, but I respected that guy. But I never had another Matco guy again. Well, we kind of had a Matco guy. He lasted about a week and a half. And he was selling stuff out of his house to get by. I mean, like, he had like a circular saw, like a corded drill. Like, they weren't like DeWalt. They were like, some Home Depot special. I'm like, oh, this guy.
It's tough in that franchise model. It really is. And
I mean, he had like a set of sockets. He had like a ratchet. If you bought anything wrong, you would have completely bought out his tool. He made it like 2 weeks, and then he was like, he was back as like a carpenter, or he wasn't even a car. I don't know what he was. He was kind of a goob, but he was a nice guy. But you knew like the sales model was not for him. They should have vetted him a lot better. It's like I knew a guy one time, and his kid was going in the military, and I knew his kid wasn't gonna make it in the military. You just like by like military has like standards, discipline, and stuff like that. And he just didn't have it. Not against him. He's a great person.
Right.
But he just didn't have it. There's some people, And so it didn't work out for him, but it's fine. I mean, he didn't have nothing bad happen to him. He didn't have any kind of weird record or anything like that. It just wasn't for him. And at least they recognized that. But at first, he was like, I want to go into the Marines. I'm like, no, you don't. I mean, I promise you, like, I have some friends that are Marines, and they're a little bit different. They're cut from a different portion of the cloth. You know? But that, as far as tools go, that's my, like, you know, that's why I buy, you know, who I buy from. You know.
Sure.
Because I know you guys, you know, but like the Coyle guy, could be a great guy. Never gonna get my dime.
Well, you know, it's all about the relationship. I learned pretty early on, and you know, when I hire guys, I want to make sure they understand that too, and that's why I like Tim so much because he gets that.
Well, that, and you know, he's been in the bit. He understands what the other guys are.
He knows exactly what's going on.
Yeah,
you can't put a curveball past him. You know,
No.
and he's eminently trustworthy, and that to me is more important than anything.
Yeah, I mean, but I promise you, there's tool guys that I've had, like the Snap-on guy before this last one. He was a super nice guy, but I wouldn't trust him as far as I could pick him up and throw him. I mean, he was cutting like some like really good deals. You're like, these are like almost too good to be true deals, you know, like, and he may have been doing that.
Yeah.
And that's why he's not the Snap-on guy anymore. Hell of a nice guy. Real customer. I mean, like real personable. Probably not the most honest guy.
No, probably not. And that's why, you know, you get that good relationship going with somebody, you really want to hang on to it because it means everything. Not only, I mean, as a tool guy, of course, it means everything to me because, you know, that's how you survive. But also for the technician, it feels good to know that someone's in your corner, that they're not just trying to sell you stuff, that they actually want to make sure that you're doing
my
well.
first Snap-on guy he was awesome. He always made sure that like you weren't falling into the pitfall. Yeah. And he gave you a great deal too. Like if you knew you were coming up, he'd always give you like 15 or 10 or something off. I mean, like he was like, all right, normally that goes for $200. I'll sell to you for $160. You know, if you pay cash today, you know, I'll give you even better.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, well, I have to now. You know, and he was an honest guy, and there's not a tech out there that ever had a bad thing to say about him. But he wanted to get he was just moving up the ladder as far as like financially. I mean, like he had reached as far as he could get with Snap-on, and he had other ventures that were taking off that Snap-on was just slowing him down. So he sold off his Snap-on stuff and moved up to the next level. But the guy we got after him was one of those guys that was like, well, I'm not going to go buy a bunch of stuff and keep it on the truck. Kind of, you know, like, I don't want all that. And you're just like, well, you're not going to last very long. You know, like, and I could always tell when a guy was about to go out of business because the tool selection just was like dropping. It was dwindling. It was going out like a candle. You know, you're like, oh man, this guy, like a couple weeks tops. It was like we used to go to this restaurant in town, and one day I was like, these guys are going to go out of business soon. And one of the guys I work with was like, how do you know? I go, well, like the soda are all out. They don't have any napkins in the holders. I mean, like they're like on close out right now. Sure enough, like 2 weeks later, gone.
Yep.
Like the context clues were like banging off the wall.
There's
like,
telltale signs for sure.
Yeah. Like when you go on your truck, it looks like you're going out of business.
But I'm not.
Yeah.
Because we don't go in this.
Maybe this podcast will take off. And
see. But that's one thing that Tim is constantly trying to get used to is just the difference in how we manage our inventory versus how he manages inventory in his last gig, where I don't want to sink a ton of money into inventory because that's a sunk cost. There's a sweet spot there in maintaining enough inventory that you can sell stuff, you know, that you have on hand. You don't want to be the guy that just shows up and takes orders from people.
You don't want to be Avon tool sales.
Correct. But you also don't want to buy so much inventory that you just wasted a ton of money into stuff that you're going to have.
If you go on the Snap-on truck, you would understand why he has that thought process because he's got 10 of everything, right?
Right.
Because Snap-on wants you to have 10 of everything.
Right.
Because we want you to look like we service any tool need you could possibly have. That's that like visual thing that they do to people. It's like one of those like subliminal, you know, sales tactics or I don't know what it is. I don't know what the proper name for it is, but that is a real thing. Like you go in the truck and you're like, they have everything. Like, I don't need to go anywhere else. I have reached Mecca. We're here. Let me get down and pray at the wall. You know, like, oh, thank you for coming by. You know, but that's a sales tactic. And,
It is.
but that gets a ton of young techs.
Oh, it does, and then you also but you have to look at pricing too, and that's the other thing that it's easy to be lulled into that.
But
into that sense that it's only going to cost me $50 a week or whatever, and
Yeah, all that. And when you see that, you're just like, the warning sign should be going off. Like, only $25 a week for 565 weeks. Like, only, that's only like half my life. Like, I'm going to be in debt forever. But then, the one thing I do like is a lot of brands have come out with like their lower level tool.
Yep.
And it gets guys in, entry level guys in a lot easier. Like I know Matco's got like the Silver Eagle, and Cornell's got like Blue Power, and Mac's got the Expert, and Snap-on's got Blue Point. And and then with you, which is neat, is you got like a variety of stuff that's probably equal or better quality, but it's not as expensive. Like between Gear Wrench, I know Gear Wrench gets banged on about some of their Torx and Allen drive sockets.
Yep, they do.
But their regular sockets are pretty good, and then Sonic's is good sockets.
And their ratchets are good. And I just had an interesting conversation with a Gear Wrench. I think he's a vice president. I don't know what he is, because I'm part of their street team program, and they're restructuring the program. And I said, well, what are the benefits now that it's being restructured? And he told me some very encouraging things. One of them is that they're dropping their regular prices on a ton of their stuff, and I like that because he says, we know that you have to compete better with online retailers. He says, we're also going to introduce some minimum pricing so that we can't be so grossly undercut by online retailers, and it's starting to sound way better. We'll see how it all works out, but I'm very encouraged for the first time in a long time.
My favorite story you told me about online is with the Gear Wrench, is about the people ordering the 44-piece wrench sets, and they show up and they're bent.
Yeah, because there are people who go on Amazon, they say, oh, this looks like a really good deal. This is way less money than it costs in the tool truck. I'll buy it. And then they buy it, and they realize it's defective, it's broken, something's wrong with it. This one guy bought their master 44-piece wrench set off of an Amazon retailer, and then asked me to help him out with warranty because the beams were curved, they were bent on the wrench. And what he doesn't know, and what no one's going to know, is what was the history of this tool. And come to find, there were times when these things ship on sea containers from their countries of origin, and they can be damaged, they can be jostled around, the problems can happen. When they get stateside, and the guy who ordered, whatever distributor ordered it, goes like, we can't use these. They'll be sold off to some other market somewhere.
They're not going to ship them back.
No, so they'll get sold off to somebody else, who then, what do they do with it? Put it on their Amazon marketplace, and they sell it for a ton less because they're fire selling this stuff. And then people see it and they go, this is a great deal, and they buy this stuff up, not having any idea what the condition is.
That's kind of like buying the LA Rams 2020 Super Bowl champion T-shirt. Like you see the kid in Africa walking around with like, I didn't realize the Bulls won a championship in 2015.
Because they get they print both versions of something, they sell off the rest at a country in a country that's out of the market. Same with the tools, but the problem is they make themselves back into the country that's in the market because it's a global economy. You can buy stuff from anywhere. So this guy buys it off an Amazon retailer, and they're damaged. And it was a conversation that we had on the value of a tool truck. I can't promise you that if you buy something on an Amazon marketplace, it's going to have a problem, right? But I can promise you, if you buy it off a tool truck, it won't.
Yeah,
right. And that's a level of service and hopefully integrity that is valuable.
Like I bought the steering wheel puller online because I didn't have any other options. Like Snap-on didn't offer a steering wheel puller that serviced what I needed. Like it was like a generalized like. It did this, but it just wasn't good enough. But I didn't have anybody else. Like I didn't have a Mac guy, I didn't have a Coyle tools guy. That's all I had. And then, when I bought my AC hose crimper, it's like, what other options do I have? Like you have like the Master Cool one that's like $640, but it says they look exactly the same. Like it might actually be the same one.
They might be because it's third-party branding is so prevalent. Half the stuff that's branded with a franchise tool company is made by another tool company.
I figure the worst case scenario, I just get suckered at it. You know what I mean? But then when you get the kit, it's quality when they send the rebuild kit for the hydraulic cylinder. like the compression tester and something. You have Lang tools in there, and you've got this stuff. Lang makes the compression testers for Snap-on. Yeah. And if you call Snap-on and you say, "Hey, I got an issue with this compression tester," and say, "Call Lang."
Call Lang.
Thanks a lot, pal. Appreciate it.
It's how the industry works. And
Oh, yeah. It's like, oh, it's not my problem. I mean, you made money on me. Yeah, I don't care. Yeah, it's not my problem. Forget about it. You're like, oh, great.
Because it's not, ultimately it's not theirs. And that's
Yeah,
that's kind of the frustration.
Joey's bag of donuts here is one to collect the money, but ain't willing to take care of nothing. You're like, oh, great. I'm like, oh, another one to fall off the truck.
Well, this seems like a pretty good high note to end on. We've been going at this one for a while.
Man.
We should probably get this one wrapped up.
Like, I am turning purple
I
now.
am really cold right now. I don't know what the inside temperature is, but
It's got to be. It's got to be under 40.
It's in the 30s easy.
Yeah, it's gotta be
I know.
under 40.
I'm really cold.
I'm surprised there's not icicles. The LED lights are the only thing keeping us warm right now. Yeah. I'm afraid to turn the heater on. My fingers might snap off.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time and bearing the cold. I appreciate
It's winter in
sharing
Texas.
your knowledge.
It'll be over tomorrow.
I know, it's true. But thanks for sharing your knowledge and the laughs and the fun, and I really appreciate it.
Yeah. So I won't let it cuss too much. Sorry.
No,
Mom.
it was fine.
Sorry, Mom and Dad.
The thing that would disappoint my parents most if they knew what my actual vocabulary consisted of.
Oh, well, mine do. I mean, they've
no.
heard me talk before, so
I don't want to break their tender hearts.
yeah. All right.
All right. Well, let's see if I can do. Let's see if I can.
Do you have an outro for this one?
I'm probably gonna use the same outro I used. I don't know. I don't know. I haven't thought of anything different. We should though.
I can't influence you. You have to come up to that way. It's organic. Because if I tell you what it is, then it's like, oh, you just.
I don't know what it would be. I want to have a name for this segment. I want to probably, I don't know, maybe a different outro would be. I don't know. But then again, I doubt anyone's really watched it this long to stick around for the outro.
It's only my parents or yours.
My mom. My dad doesn't. I don't think he watches the videos because it's like.
My dad might have clicked off by now. I'm not sure.
My dad probably never even clicked onto it. My mom will stay to the bitter
My
end.
mom will watch twice. She might use it. She might use her burner account to watch it.
Just leave it going in the background and she goes does something else. Yeah.
She's like, oh, I watched it twice to get more views. You're like, what? I only got 2 views, Mom.
And I watched it once.
I was like, I haven't even watched it yet. She's like, oh, I like your video. Like my Instagram. So my Instagram is like infinitely more popular than my YouTube is. And so my mom's like Instagram handle is something completely different. Like you would never guess who it was, but I knew who it was instantly because of her Instagram handle. And she like watched all my videos and liked them all, and I went, I go, thanks, Mom. She goes, how'd you know it was me? I'm like, come on, I'm your kid. But
so anyway, well, thanks again. I really appreciate it. I hope you found it valuable. Please leave suggestions you have in the comments for the format, or if you think that something like this is worthwhile, we'll certainly do more of it. But your feedback's important there, so let me know. And check out Cass's Instagram and check out his YouTube channel, Speed Wrench. He's getting his channel up and running now, so check out the content he's got, and I'm sure there's more coming down the line.
Yeah, we have a ton of videos in the edit phase. So.
Yep. And we've got a whole bunch of videos lined up now, too. I've been really fortunate. We've been getting enough stuff in now. I don't know when this one's going to go on YouTube, but we've got, it's actually December 31st today, New Year's Eve. And we've got videos lined up through March right now, which is really nice. So, we're at a point where we can really build out some consistent content. So, do me a favor, check out the channel, look at all the different kinds of video formats we have if you haven't already. We've got all kinds of different videos coming out because we're going to be starting a vlog series. The flyer drop series is the new one for us. So we've got the second one that's going to be posted for Q1 of 2021. We've also got some cool announcements about our new online store. So do me a favor, click down here to subscribe now so that you don't miss any of it. Thank you so much for watching. And remember, use a tool. Don't be one. God, it's cold.
Yeah, I think it's sleeting right now.
My hand stopped working.
I'm turning the heater on.